Hello everyone, welcome back! Today's story follows Minamoto Ren, an ordinary office worker suddenly thrown into the brutal world of Naruto during the Second Great Ninja War. With a mysterious system, Ren must rise not through strength, but through strategy, alliances, and influence. Get ready to witness a battle of power, politics, and survival, where every decision counts. For more exclusive content, visit patreon.com/mv1717.
Part 1 of Naruto, Art of Power. In the 38th year of the Hidden Leaf Village, the ninja world was in turmoil. The Second Great Ninja War had entered its second year, and the land was drenched in blood. Minamoto Ren, once an ordinary civil servant in his previous life, had been so engrossed in reading Naruto manga while walking down the street that he got himself isekai'd into this world. Now, he found himself a proud, but utterly expendable, Genin of Konoha. At this very moment, the third Hokage stood high upon the platform, addressing the crowd. It was a war assembly. Konoha was about to launch a campaign against the Hidden Rain. Amidst the throng of black-clad shinobi, Minamoto Ren stared blankly up at the Hokage. This war is a just resistance against Hanzo's invasion. A glorious war, one worthy of being written into history. Oh, hi. I swear to you. This will be the final war, the war that ends all wars. Oh. Crushed within the crowd of hollering shinobi, Ren felt suffocated. Every word from Hiruzen Sarutobi's mouth was a lie. And yet, it was these empty, hollow slogans that were driving countless people toward foreign lands, and toward their deaths. Is this what power looks like, the power of the Hokage, and me? Did I come here just to die like cannon fodder? Ren's heart was full of resentment. He clenched his jaw, his eyes fixed on the triumphant figure of the third Hokage on the high platform. Oh. That child's got fire in his eyes. Very spirited. Sarutobi Hiruzen, just 40 this year and far from losing his ninja sharpness, immediately noticed the intensity in Ren's gaze. He didn't interpret it as defiance, but rather as the spark of the will of fire ignited by his speech. Pleased, he locked eyes with Ren and gave him an approving thumbs up. / You have entered the observation scope of the third Hokage. Please perform well. A strange mechanical voice suddenly echoed in Ren's mind, catching him completely off guard. What, are you? He asked in shock. / System, a support system named Game of Power. And your function? Ren asked instinctively, slipping into his bureaucratic habits. / To assist you in seizing and wielding power. Each time you control or manipulate a key power structure, you will be rewarded with a tangible manifestation of that power. Before Ren could ask anything further, the system turned the tables. / The system's effectiveness depends on your own understanding of power. So, host, what is power? Ren didn't hesitate. Power, at its core, is violence, but it goes beyond that. The exercise of power comes in many forms, from personnel decisions to the enforcement of rules and regulations. They're all extensions of it. / Excellent. Then how do you perceive the scene before you? Ren turned his gaze back to the crowd, jubilant, oblivious shinobi unknowingly marching toward hell. Then, he looked back at the third Hokage standing above them, flanked by his 3 personal disciples and the rising star, Namikaze Minato. After a moment of silence, he gave his answer, power. This is the power of the Hokage. / Target confirmed. Please advance toward the power of the Hokage. The system fell silent. The only sounds that remained were the fervent cries of the Konoha shinobi echoing around him. Ren nodded. He understood everything now. This system wasn't some gamey kill-loot level-up cheat. Nor was it a multiverse chat group. It was a system that adapted itself to the host's knowledge of power, and that was something Ren had plenty of. Based on my understanding of power, display system panel. With a swish, a layered interface unfolded in his mind, / village, Konoha, ruled by the Hokage, co-governed by the clans, current power core, Sarutobi Hiruzen, secondary power nodes, Shimura Danzo, Hataki Sakumo, Mitokado Hamura, Yudatane Koharu, current power index, 0, no man of ambition can go a day without power. Ren exhaled slowly. It was time to return to his old craft. If he wanted to seize power, the first step was to get close to the core of it. But that wasn't easy, he was just a lowly genin. How could he possibly work his way into Sarutobi Hiruzen's inner circle? Sarutobi's too hot, he's surrounded by layers of insulation. I need to find someone cooler to approach. Namikaze Minato isn't obscure, but he's not part of the current military operation, so he's out. Sarutobi's old friends. Also out. Jiraiya is too carefree, he's not someone who fights for power. Orochimaru is too cold and guarded, without talent or a Kekkei Genkai, I'd never catch his attention. Which leaves Tsunade. Tsunade's status is way too high. And her lover, Kato Dan, is still alive. If I try to get close to her, it'll look suspicious, she'll see right through it, and I'll end up dead. Ren's expression turned grim. After evaluating every possible candidate, it felt like there was no room to maneuver at all. No, wait. There's still one more person, his eyes lit up. He suddenly thought of someone who wouldn't attract attention if approached, yet had the power to influence Tsunade's decisions. Senju Nawaki, Tsunade's younger brother. I'll start with you. Ren lowered his gaze, hiding the spark of excitement in his eyes. System, can you locate Senju Nawaki for me? With so many people gathered in the square, and since he wasn't a classmate of Nawaki's, it wasn't going to be easy to find him. Searching. A moment later, Ren's eyes locked onto a short, blonde-haired ninja in the crowd, identical to the anime depiction. That's him. Senju Nawaki. Now that he'd identified his target, Ren began thinking about how to approach him. He hadn't dealt with kids much in his past life, and now, at the start of this one, his first mission was to win one over. He had to plan this out carefully. Half an hour later, the rally concluded. The square buzzed with excitement as the shinobi dispersed to their assigned staging areas. Departure was scheduled for early the next morning. Nawaki stood out as particularly energetic. Deeply influenced by the will of fire, he had taken the third Hokage's speech to heart. At that moment, he was animatedly discussing the Hokage's words with his friends. That's when Ren approached. At first, he simply stood nearby, quietly listening to Nawaki preach the will of fire. He took a moment to organize his thoughts, then interjected at just the right moment. That was incredible. I can't believe your views on the will of fire are so in sync with mine. A hero in the making, no doubt. Nawaki finally noticed the stranger beside him. The boy looked around 15 or 16 years old, with clean, handsome features and warm, intelligent eyes that gleamed like polished jade. But more than the stranger's looks, what caught Nawaki's attention were his words. A complete stranger had recognized his insight and brilliance, something even his own sister brushed off whenever he tried to share his thoughts at home. So you understand the will of fire too? Nawaki asked proudly, chin tilted upward. Of course. Wherever the leaves dance, the fire burns brightly. The third Hokage has inherited the will of the original ninja god himself. Honestly, while Lord Hiruzen is undeniably strong, it's the Senju clan, who produced two Hokage, that truly embodies the will of fire. Ren's eyes sparkled with fervor. Oh. You really get it, huh? Ha ha ha. It's rare for someone to explain the will of fire even better than me. I, the great Nawaki, will grudgingly acknowledge you. It was clear that Minamoto Ren's flattery had hit all the right notes. He had spoken from the lofty perspective of the Hokage while emphasizing the pivotal role of the Senju clan, exactly the kind of praise Nawaki loved most. Ren smiled warmly, pretending to be delighted by the acknowledgement. These second-generation elites were so easy to win over. Just like descendants of Qing nobility or Brahmin caste, praise their ancestors, and they'd value it more than praise for themselves. After a few moments of casual laughter, and sensing Nawaki in high spirits, Ren pretended to be lost in thought, then spoke up just as Nawaki looked his way. Nawaki. That name rings a bell. Oh right, you're the grandson of the first Hokage, aren't you? No wonder. No wonder, young master, you're so, /system, what's Nawaki's score in theoretical studies? /67. Just barely passing. No wonder you're able to express such profound insights about the will of fire. I always thought the academy teachers were too rigid with their grading. Back when I studied, I could only score a 97 on theory. But now that I've heard your perspective, I finally understand what a perfect score should look like. Ha 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 ha. Did you hear that? All of you, did you hear that? Even someone who scored 97 says I'm right. And you guys used to laugh at me. TCH. Only you truly understand me. Nawaki was so excited he threw his arms around Ren's, laughing and shouting at his friends in triumph. Ren let them carry on for a bit. When the noise settled slightly, he leaned in and asked quietly, Nawaki-sama, do you want to become Hokage? Huh? Senju Nawaki froze. Had he just heard what he thought he heard? Of course I do. I dream about becoming Hokage. But how do I get there? Every time I ask my sister, she just scoffs and says there's nothing good about being Hokage. But I really want it. That reaction, emotional, frustrated, full of yearning, was exactly what Ren had been waiting for. Adults often dismissed a child's ambition because the power gap was just too massive. But Ren wasn't playing the adult, he was playing the sycophant, the trusted sidekick. If Tsunade wouldn't be there for Nawaki, he would earn Nawaki's trust now, and he'd be able to leverage it later, especially when dealing with Tsunade. Nawaki pressed him again, tell me. How do I become Hokage? Ren suddenly adopted a serious, almost sacred expression, roleplay was everything with kids. You had to sell it. I'll tell you, but on one condition. When you become Hokage, you have to name me your personal advisor. Deal? I promise. I promise. Just tell me already. Alright then. But this is a secret. I'll only tell you. Listen closely, come closer. Ren lowered his voice like a snake offering forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden. Nawaki's friends leaned in, but he and Ren kept the conversation exclusive, their voices barely audible. The secret to becoming Hokage is making sure all your older siblings, aunts, and uncles like you. When you're a little older, say, my age, you'll be qualified for the position. It sounded almost too simple, but Ren wasn't lying. The people who could be considered Nawaki's aunts, uncles, and older siblings weren't ordinary villagers. They were Konoha's most powerful figures. If they all supported Nawaki, his path to Hokage would be a given. Of course, Ren also knew the bitter truth, Nawaki wouldn't live long enough to realize any of that. He simply didn't have the fate or the strength. Nawaki's eyes went wide. That's it? That's simple, his first reaction, you're not lying to me, are you? Ren was perfectly calm. He had his answer ready. If you don't believe me, ask your sister, Tsunade-sama, tonight. If she says I'm lying, then I'm lying. But if she doesn't, then you'll know it's true. Seeing how confident Ren was, Nawaki believed him completely. No, I'm going to ask her right now. Nawaki was impulsive by nature. He let go of Ren's arm and bolted down the street toward home. Ren stood still and silently counted, 1, 2, 3. Sure enough, wait. What's your name? Nawaki had already run a good distance before realizing he didn't even know who to credit, or blame, if things went south with Tsunade. Nawaki-sama. I'm Minamoto Ren, from Genin Squad 17. Ren called out, even using chakra to amplify his voice. He wanted this name to reach Tsunade's ears. If his plan worked, tonight would be the night he gained the attention of one of Konoha's future sannin. Nawaki ran straight home. As Tsunade's little brother, he wasn't stationed at any outposts outside the village, and Tsunade had stayed behind as well. Once home, Nawaki's eyes darted around. His sister was hunched over her desk, scribbling furiously and forming hand seals with bursts of greenish-white chakra flashing from her fingertips. She was deep in research, developing new medical ninjutsu. Nawaki didn't care for medical techniques. He admired his grandfather and granduncle, the ones who had wielded wood release and water release. Sadly, no one in the clan had awakened wood release in a long time. "Sis, someone told me a secret today," Nawaki said, dragging a stool over to sit beside her. The image of the two siblings, one large and one small, quietly leaning on each other was unexpectedly warm. Tsunade glanced at him briefly without pausing her work. She didn't believe for a second that her little brother could possibly know anything worth calling a secret. That single glance from Tsunade carried far too many layers, and it instantly ticked Nawaki off. "Humph. You're always underestimating me. And you call yourself my sister. That Genin out there understands me better than you do." He didn't really mean it, but the sting in his voice was real. And it was enough to make Tsunade pause, if only slightly. Her hand froze mid-sentence. Nawaki's identity wasn't that politically sensitive, but it wasn't irrelevant either. And thanks to years of dealing with Danzo and his scheming, Tsunade's instincts for sniffing out manipulation were finely honed. She sensed the faintest whiff of something unusual. "All right then," she said with a soft smile, gently coaxing, "why don't you tell your big sister this secret? I know a lot of secrets, you know. Let me help you check if it's real." Tsunade was no slouch when it came to lying to kids either. "Humph. Then listen up. What he told me is the secret to becoming Hokage." Nawaki puffed up his chest, his face glowing with pride. He might as well have had "gullible and proud" written across his forehead. Tsunade, ever the skilled kunoichi, managed to hold back her laughter. Instead, she leaned in seriously. "And what secret could possibly be hidden behind becoming Hokage? Lean closer." "I don't want anyone else to hear," Nawaki said, looking around with exaggerated secrecy. Once she obliged, he repeated every word Minamoto Ren had told him, without missing a single syllable. Tsunade was stunned for a beat, and then burst out laughing. She laughed so hard she had to reach out and poke his forehead with her signature great desolate imprisoning heavenly finger, leaving behind a comically red dot. Nawaki puffed up like a pufferfish, cheeks bulging in fury. So he was lying. "You're laughing way too hard. I'm mad now." Tsunade pulled her fuming little brother into her arms before he could storm off to find Ren and settle the score. She gently tousled his hair, then whispered softly, "No, he wasn't lying. But the truth is, you just don't understand how difficult that secret really is. When you're older, you'll see it for what it is." Nawaki still couldn't quite believe it. Was it really so hard to make people like Orochimaru, Big Brother Jiraiya, or Uncle Nara, Yamanaka, and Akimichi like him? They already liked him a lot, so the only thing keeping him from becoming Hokage was age. Damn it. If only I were a few years older. In Tsunade's eyes, a flicker of cunning passed like a shadow. She understood now. She had picked up on the goodwill of this unfamiliar Genin. Compared to herself, this outsider had a natural ability to connect with Nawaki. He could integrate life lessons into things the boy actually cared about. That was something she had never been able to do. She was too busy. Too busy with the war, with her research into advanced medical ninjutsu, too entangled with the Sandame's expectations and the tangled mess left behind by the Senju clan's legacy. There was only one Tsunade, and she couldn't stretch herself any thinner. Maybe what Nawaki needed wasn't just a sister, but someone to walk beside him as he grew. Someone he wouldn't grow to resent. With that thought, Tsunade gave her little brother a kiss on the cheek, then asked solemnly, "The person who told you this secret, what's his name? Do you like him?" Seeing her serious face, Nawaki hesitated. He twisted his fingers nervously before finally giving a firm answer. His name is Minamoto Ren. He's a genin from Team 17. I really like him. Talking to him just feels right. Tsunade listened, processing each word. She nodded slowly, then waved him off with a rare softness in her tone. It's fine now. Go play. Nawaki vanished in a flash, already bursting with excitement. Tsunade sat alone for a while, writing names down on a scroll, only to cross most of them out. In the end, one name remained, Minamoto Ren. She had made up her mind. Rising to her feet, she formed a quick sequence of hand seals. A gust of wind blew through the house, and just like that, the room was empty. Only the open window swayed slightly in the night breeze. That same night, at precisely 9 p.m., Minamoto Ren had just finished his training routine and taken a shower. He was lying down, ready for sleep, when the previously silent power system finally stirred to life. Power index fluctuation detected. Current power index, 1 first successful manipulation of Hokage factional influence. Authority manifestation, Shikatsumiyaku, dead bone pulse, Minamoto Ren's breath caught in his throat, but his face remained calm, eyes gently closed. I'd like to know the details of this power shift, he said quietly. As you wish. The secondary power agent who enabled your success, Senju Tsunade. At 5:45 p.m., Senju Nawaki engaged in a brief conversation with Senju Tsunade. This affected her judgment. At 5:55 p.m., Tsunade temporarily adjusted team assignments. You have been transferred into Team 10, Nawaki's unit. Mizunamaru was removed from the prince's team to make room. At 8:35 p.m., this personnel change was submitted to the Hokage, Hirozen Sarutobi. He reviewed and approved it. Personnel decisions are power. Your ability to manipulate hearts and tilt the balance of influence is impressive. Ha ha ha. For someone who always appeared calm, refined, and almost overly polite, Minamoto Ren suddenly burst into wild laughter as he sat upright on his futon. The thrill of manipulating power, of pulling invisible strings, was absolutely intoxicating. Shikatsumiyaku. Dead bone pulse. Ren extended his arm, and with a faint crack, a sharpened bone spike jutted from beneath his skin. He ran his fingers along its surface, feeling not just strength, but the manifestation of power itself. Not chakra. Not bloodline. But the tangible form of Hokage-era political influence. Power was a vast web. Even the faintest tremor in its furthest threads could ripple across the entire network. Any challenge had a solution, so long as you could identify the right person to move. Senju Nawaki. I truly owe you. Ren's voice dropped, feral and low. If I'd stayed in Team 17 during this war, I probably wouldn't have survived. But under you, I'll make it through. His smile twisted. It was the look of a man intoxicated not by bloodlust, but by control. Power-hungry beasts were always the same. Always wanting to be just a little closer to the center. Just one step nearer to the flame. Good night, Nawaki. He yanked the bone spike from his arm and tossed it into the waste bin. Then, with a calm, contented smile, he lay back and sank into the sweetest sleep of his life. The next morning. A Chunin arrived to deliver Ren's reassignment notice. You've been transferred out of Team 17, he muttered, clearly trying to sound neutral. But the twist at the corner of his mouth betrayed a quiet envy. Not long after, Mizunamaru, now officially removed from the prince's team, slouched into Team 17's camp with the aura of a man who'd lost everything. His eyes were full of questions. Why, he'd always gotten along with Nawaki. They'd shared meals. He'd even been invited to Tsunade's estate, everything had been decided. Why the sudden change? Minamoto Ren didn't gloat. He gave Mizunamaru a simple nod in greeting, then turned and left for his new assignment with Team 10. In his mind, Mizunamaru was already half dead. Not worth another word. In fact, Ren even pitied him a little. People never understood, even the smallest whim of the powerful, one petty personnel change, could determine life or death for countless shinobi. That's why you had to climb. Climb high. Climb fast. Climb until your position on the web was unshakable. He composed himself before entering the Team 10 tent. Nawaki was already having breakfast. Across from him sat Hyuga Heining, a main branch heir of the Hyuga clan and one of Nawaki's closer friends. And then there was the third figure. Back turned, silent. Even without seeing his face, Minamoto Ren felt a pressure that made the air heavier. Orochimaru. So Tsunade really did assign Orochimaru to protect Nawaki, he realized, heart pounding. It wasn't unexpected, but knowing was different from feeling. The man radiated lethal energy. This was a shinobi near the level of a Kage. Someone whose whim could kill him in a heartbeat. Sit. Get your own utensils, Orochimaru said without even turning around. Ren could only see the faint bulge of his cheek as he chewed, utterly indifferent. But that casual dismissal was a relief. Ren knew that everything, his little ploys, his reassignments, was likely transparent to both Tsunade and Orochimaru. But that was fine. It was a noble conspiracy. Like a child throwing a tantrum over a toy. Adults would naturally give in, and then make sure the toy didn't break. Minamoto Ren was Nawaki's toy. At least, that's how he saw it. Morning, Lord Nawaki, he said with an easy smile. A toy should know its place. Huh? It's you. What are you doing here? Nawaki blinked, then perked up immediately, all trace of his early morning dullness gone. I don't know either, Ren replied with a mock sigh. Got the transfer this morning. Can't believe I ended up on your team. I was worried I wouldn't fit in, but now. This is great. He knew. They both knew. But like all kids, Nawaki was quick to brush it aside. Soon they were chatting up a storm, about the will of fire, about becoming Hokage, about how much they both hated that smug Uchiha face, childish topics, all of them, but so very human. Even Hyuga Heining eventually joined in. Orochimaru didn't so much as lift an eyelid. He was just Tsunade's insurance policy. A bodyguard for the Senju heir. He didn't particularly care about these brats. If it weren't for Tsunade's request, and their long history together, he never would have bothered. After all, since when did Orochimaru lead Genin squads? He didn't even like kids. Nawaki. Breakfast had barely ended when Orochimaru set down his chopsticks and called out coldly. I'm here. Sensei, what is it? Nawaki, who'd been goofing off with Hyuga Heining and Minamoto Ren just a moment ago, immediately stood at attention like a soldier caught slacking. Even Heining straightened up with a soft shff sound, his head bowed respectfully, a Hyuga instinct, perhaps, where hierarchy was second nature. As for Minamoto Ren, he rose slowly, and the smile that had danced on his face seconds ago faded into something colder, more distant. Maybe this was his real face. Orochimaru ignored both Heining and Ren. His eyes locked onto Nawaki's. I gave you a training regimen, he said flatly. Tree walking and water walking. Have you mastered them? Nawaki's eyes darted to the side. One hand scratched the back of his head. He didn't have to answer. Orochimaru already knew. Still, there were other tasks. Maybe Nawaki had done something else, the ninjutsu I taught you, second Hokage's water release, wild water wave. Did you practice it? Chakra extraction. Orochimaru's tone sharpened. You're a senju. Chakra control is supposed to be your clan's strong suit. Did you at least do that? Ugh, Nawaki's head sank lower, sweat beading along his temples. Orochimaru sounded like a strict middle school teacher firing off test questions. Each one hit Nawaki like a brick. Deep down, he still preferred training under Jiraiya, but Tsunade had insisted on Orochimaru. So here he was. And truth be told, he was a little afraid of him. Then, Orochimaru said calmly, "After today's march, your training assignment remains the same." He turned his gaze to Heining and Minamoto Ren. "As for you two, you'll be joining him. The ninjutsu scroll is in his possession. I suggest keeping your progress synchronized." And with that, Orochimaru formed a hand seal and vanished, leaving the tent in silence. Phew, Nawaki let out a long breath and flopped his tongue like a panting puppy. "Ren, be honest, isn't Orochimaru kind of terrifying? Every time he looks at me, it feels like my heart's about to jump out of my chest." Ren nodded. Orochimaru's presence was overwhelming. Still young, only in his 20s, but the man had already killed far too many. Cold. Hyperrational. Utterly detached. You could feel it just standing near him. Ren mentally walked through what had just happened. Orochimaru's barrage of questions wasn't just scolding, it was a thorough evaluation of Nawaki's progress. And that last comment about keeping progress synchronized, that was soft coercion. What did keep your progress synchronized really mean? It meant that until Nawaki mastered walking on trees and water, neither Ren nor Heining was allowed to advance. Heining could probably tolerate that, he was a main branch Hyuga, used to restraint and etiquette. But Minamoto Ren, he was here to climb. To survive. He didn't plan on staying stuck in the Crown Prince's babysitter squad. He cast a sideways glance at Heining, who was looking back at him. The Hyuga's forehead was glistening with sweat, his pristine clan uniform damp with humidity, and his white eyes filled with unspoken anxiety. So he gets it. Ren nodded internally. Only Nawaki doesn't. "Congratulations, Nawaki," Ren said suddenly, his tone warm and genuine. "Huh?" Nawaki blinked in confusion. "I said, congratulations. You've taken another step toward becoming Hokage." Even Heining flinched in surprise. "Was this guy serious, you mean?" Nawaki's eyes lit up with hope. Ren nodded solemnly, like a man delivering a political speech. "Orochimaru-sama is training you in the same way the second Hokage trained his chosen. That means he sees potential in you. Real Hokage-level potential." From the side, Heining slowly shook his head. "If you knew Nawaki like I do, you wouldn't say that." "Ha ha ha. I get it now." Nawaki grinned from ear to ear, folding his arms proudly. "If you hadn't pointed it out, I'd have thought he was just disappointed in me." "Ha ha ha ha. That might still be true." Heining began nodding along like a nervous chick pecking at rice. Ren frowned. Nawaki's response was too casual. He was dodging the real issue again. He's playful to a fault. And if you're here to study with the prince, you'd better make damn sure he's actually studying, or you'll be executed with him. Ren stepped forward, placed both hands on Nawaki's shoulders, and looked him dead in the eyes. "Nawaki-sama," he said firmly. "Orochimaru-sama has such high expectations for you. What are you prepared to do, to live up to them?" This, think about Lady Tsunade, Nawaki-sama. Doesn't she work late into the night every single day? Sometimes she even has to go out in the middle of the night for missions, right? That's because there are no more men left in the Senju clan to carry the banner of Hokage. And you, Senju Nawaki, you're the one true Hokage of peace. Family appeal plus emotional appeal plus Hokage appeal. Ren played all his cards at once. That speech could pump Nawaki full of motivation for at least a week. "But I heard the grown-ups say Lady Tsunade goes out late at night to gamble." Hyuga Heining barely got the words out before Ren slapped a hand over his mouth. "MMPH. MMPH." Ren shot Heining a death glare, then turned to Nawaki, and wow. The kid was crying like someone had opened a faucet. Tears and snot ran down his face in a glorious mess. Make that 2 weeks of motivation. Yua. I'm gonna train. I'm gonna become Hokage. I don't want One-chan to be so tired anymore. Nawaki howled, his voice echoing through the tent. Outside, passing shinobi paused, wondering who on earth was bullying him. Good. That's the spirit. Ren said, seizing the moment. That's the Senju Nawaki I know. The man I recognize as a true heir to the will of fire. Suddenly, Orochimaru appeared in the tent, brows tightly furrowed. He had just returned from a strategy meeting when he heard Nawaki's shouting from afar. Seeing the kid crying, he immediately suspected the worst. Are these two really cut out for this? Tsunade picked them as Nawaki's companions, but now it looked like they were ganging up on him. Orochimaru's cold gaze swept across Ren and Heining. For a moment, both boys felt like they were staring down their own execution. But then, Yuwa. Sensei. I swear I'll work hard. Wa. Teach me how to climb trees and walk on water again. I didn't listen properly last time. Wa. In a shocking turn of events, the same Nawaki who used to treat Orochimaru like some kind of terrifying monster suddenly lunged forward and hugged his leg, smearing tears and snot all over his long robe. Orochimaru froze. His eyes slowly turned toward Ren and Heining, expression unreadable. Ren just smiled and nodded calmly. Heining, a little panicked, looked at Ren for reassurance. You've done well, Orochimaru said finally. He gently rested a hand on Nawaki's head, voice low and hoarse, but with a warmth rarely heard from him. It was, by his standards, the highest praise possible. Orochimaru's rare praise, Minamoto Ren accepted it calmly. He had earned it. Or rather, this was the outcome he had calculated from the start. Out of all the people in Konoha, all the possible angles to approach, why had Ren chosen Senju Nawaki? On one hand, the kid was easy to manipulate. But on the other hand, the return on investment was astronomical. Think about it, one Senju Nawaki, how many people, how many resources, how much Hokage-level authority could he mobilize? Whatever Ren gave here, he could reclaim 100-fold, from Tsunade, from Orochimaru, from Jiraiya, and maybe even from Sarutobi Hiruzen himself. Letting the ambition fade from his smiling eyes, Ren said nothing more. But in his mind, every favor, every conversation, every calculated gesture was a thread in a vast web, a web that, once complete, would ensnare the entire ninja world. In the tent, the four of them stood quietly, waiting for Nawaki's emotional outburst to run its course. Once the tears finally stopped, Orochimaru gave the long-awaited marching orders. It would take about 10 days to reach the border of the Land of Rain. Tsunade, by rank and reputation, had been named overall commander, with neither Orochimaru nor Jiraiya objecting. The orders she had given in the recent tactical meeting were now being relayed through her officers. All Genin squads numbered 15 and above will move with the main force into the Iwaku Gorge. Squads numbered below 15 will act as flanking support and advance into the Urio Mountains. Ren's brows furrowed slightly. Squad 15, that was the rough dividing line between life and death in this war. If memory served him right, the campaign would end in utter disaster. Konoha's forces would be nearly wiped out. Only the legendary Sannin would be spared by Salamander Hanzo, earning their infamous title in blood. Which meant, Ren had just narrowly escaped the fate of being cannon fodder. But in exchange, he now faced a new threat, Hanzo of the Salamander himself. Shaking off these useless thoughts, Ren steeled his will once more. He believed in action. Fate could shift at any moment, in the next decision, the next encounter. Until he actually died, he refused to give up the fight. Seeing that none of the three spoke, Orochimaru chuckled lightly. Genin always looked nervous before battle, but for him, this mission carried little real risk. The only real threat, Hanzo, was rumored to be storming castles in the Land of Iron. No time to worry about a special task force like theirs. In other words, this campaign was more about training than combat. With that thought, Orochimaru raised his arm and gave the command as squad leader, move out. It's going to be a long day's march. In an instant, hundreds of shinobi took off into the trees, running and leaping like a swarm of locusts bursting into flight. These weren't just any locusts, though, every single one of them was at least Chunin level. The lower-ranked genin, especially those who hadn't yet mastered chakra control, had no choice but to sprint hard on foot. Now's a great time to practice, Nawaki, Ren said, walking beside him. As long as we don't fall too far behind, we'll be fine. The thing is, tree walking requires stopping, Nawaki said, confused. Wouldn't that mean falling behind right away? You don't have to stop. Ren gave him a clever smile. Just leap onto a branch, then lean back and let yourself fall. I'll catch you from below. The moment you can stabilize yourself mid-fall, that's when you've grasped the basics of tree walking. Nawaki's eyes lit up. Ren, you're a genius. When I become Hokage, you have to be my chief advisor. He wasn't stupid. He'd understood Ren's idea immediately. Tree walking and water walking were nothing more than exercises in chakra control, learning how to distribute chakra evenly, or unevenly, through the soles of one's feet. Once you understood the principle, it was easy to design different ways to practice. Soon, Minamoto Ren and Nawaki were fully immersed in training. Nawaki would leap forward from branch to branch, then purposefully fall. Ren, running just behind, would catch him mid-fall, never slowing their travel, though it certainly made the journey more exhausting. Clever shinobi, Orochimaru remarked with a rare smile, observing from a distance. He appreciated intelligent subordinates. By the fifth day, Nawaki had successfully learned how to adjust the chakra flow in his feet depending on the surface. His excitement was uncontainable. Ren, look! I did it! The boy was practically horizontal, suspended mid-fall between two branches, grinning like a madman. I knew you could, Ren praised him without hesitation. Then, turning his head mid-stride, Ren called out to another member of their squad, what about you, Hyuga Heining? Want to give it a try? Oh, no, it's fine. I've been practicing on my own at night. Heining, with dark circles under his eyes, looked utterly drained. Don't be shy. I'm 5 years older than you both, looking after you is part of the job. Come on. Ren smiled. His ambitions extended beyond Nawaki. Power was a web, and every thread had its value. After a few seconds of hesitation, Hyuga Heining agreed. Ren gave off a trustworthy, big brother vibe, calm and reliable. Despite being a Hyuga, Heining didn't sense any danger in accepting his help. Nawaki, on the other hand, couldn't help but pout. He'd grown used to monopolizing Ren's attention, and now that someone else was taking half of it, well, it didn't sit well with him. When did Hyuga Heining get this annoying? Unlike Nawaki, Heining picked it up faster. He had full mastery within just 3 days. After all, he was a main house Hyuga, and his clan's control over chakra was famously precise. Humph. Ren, Orochimaru-sensei said we're supposed to keep pace with each other. Nawaki grumbled. You've been helping Heining all day, what about your own training? Me? Ren smiled faintly. I've already mastered it. What? You have? Nawaki's eyes widened. You mean you've been hiding it from me this whole time? Nope. I only just got the hang of it these past few days. Thanks to you two sharing your experiences. Without that, I couldn't have picked it up so quickly. Heining gave him a side eye so hard it could cut through steel. Those scattered mutterings of ours count as experience. If that's all it takes, I should have mastered tree walking months ago. Still, this was Minamoto Ren. Even his lies sounded pleasant, though this time, he was telling the truth. And the secret lay in his Kekiai Genkai, Shikatsumiyaku, the dead bone pulse. The hardest part of chakra control was dealing with variations in chakra output caused by the subtle shifting of pressure points in the soles of the feet. Even the tiniest change in muscle tension could throw everything off. But with Shikatsu Miyaku, Ren didn't need to master that kind of muscular precision at all. He could manipulate his bone structure to pin his chakra points exactly where he wanted them, perfect chakra flow, no training required. Seeing that neither Nawaki nor Heining believed him, Ren didn't bother explaining further. He leapt lightly onto a tree trunk and leaned backward mid-air, holding perfectly steady at a 45-degree angle, without moving an inch. There. Believe me now. Ren landed as lightly as a leaf and took off again. Nawaki stared, dumbfounded. What the hell? I thought we were all the worst in our class, when did we end up traveling with a genius? Heining, annoyed, activated his Byakugan to examine Ren's feet. You telling me someone can learn tree walking just by watching? The only thing I'm watching is a walking poem of frustration. It took 13 full days for Konoha's massive army to reach their assigned strategic position, Yuwaku Gorge. Along the way, Minamoto Ren observed the stark differences between the land of fire and the land of rain. After crossing the border, the humidity in the air thickened, the ground grew muddier with each step, and the rainfall intensified far beyond what they'd seen at the edge of the nations. From this alone, Ren could tell, in the shinobi world, regional powers had naturally formed in response to geography, climate, and culture. It was a truth grounded in reality, perhaps something Hashirama Senju had recognized, which was why he never waged indiscriminate wars of conquest. But Ren still believed Hashirama's decision to evenly distribute the tailed beasts was naive at best. Regroup. Orochimaru's sudden command snapped him from his thoughts. Ren noticed that Orochimaru had switched his usual cloak for a full suit of shinobi armor, standard gear for Konoha during the Second Great Ninja War. It was a far cry from the green vests of the later era, and a clear echo of the Warring States period, when even Uchiha Madara wore full battle armor. Ooh, do we have a mission? Nawaki snapped to attention with eager eyes. He'd been training hard every day and felt more powerful than ever. Tsunade asked me to let you see some blood, Orochimaru said calmly, too calmly. A terrifying thing to say, delivered as if it were weather talk. But this was how soldiers were forged. Many ninja talked big during peacetime, but once they saw real bloodshed, they collapsed. Such shinobi were dead weight on the battlefield. Without another word, the four-man squad moved out. Ren instantly heightened his awareness. In the original timeline, Nawaki died on a mission, blown apart by a single explosive tag. It was ironic, wasn't it? Of all the thousands of paper bombs used in Naruto, only one ever truly mattered, the one that killed Nawaki. And as Nawaki's appointed royal companion, Ren had no intention of letting that happen again. Before long, Orochimaru's summoned snakes picked up the trail of an enemy group. But they weren't shinobi, just civilians from the land of rain. That in itself made Orochimaru uneasy. Killing shinobi or killing civilians, it made no difference to him. Blood was blood. But where were the rain ninja? Why weren't there any border patrols? No sentries. Not even basic scouts. Was Hanzo of the Salamander truly unconcerned about Konoha striking deep into his territory? Orochimaru didn't voice these thoughts. Instead, found them. Move out. He vanished with a flicker. 2 minutes later, their squad stood in front of a group of emaciated, lifeless villagers. Even after spotting the shinobi, the civilians barely reacted. Are you here to collect taxes again? An old man stepped forward, calm and expressionless. The rain ninja were here. Orochimaru asked flatly. When? Where did they go? The old man nodded, then shook his head. You're too late. The higher-ups evacuated 3 days ago, taking all the supplies with them. Because of Lord Hanzo's latest maneuvers, there's nothing left in the village, no food, no reserves. How much did they take? Orochimaru asked, unusually talkative. Everything. Even what little we had hidden. The shinobi said, with Konoha coming, you'll die anyway, so better to contribute what you can to the cause. Just a few short sentences, but in them, Ren felt deep sorrow and hopelessness. The land of rain had become a battlefield again and again. The sand came and raised it. The stone came and raised it. Now Konoha would do the same. And even the rain ninja themselves would plunder what little remained. Hanzo, as powerful as he was, could barely hold things together. What chance did civilians like these have? In this world, life or death depended entirely on the whims of shinobi. Orochimaru clearly understood this reality. He might not have explained it in philosophical terms, but he had seen enough blood to know the truth. Without warning, he unsheathed his ninja blade and handed it to Nawaki. Kill him. Nawaki, a child of the Senju clan and naturally empathetic, had already wanted to interrupt the conversation several times, but Orochimaru's rapid questions left no room. Now, hearing this order, he froze. The teacher he'd just begun to warm up to suddenly felt like a stranger again. Why? Nawaki's voice trembled. Orochimaru blinked, puzzled by the question. This is war. Do you need a reason to kill? Before Nawaki could protest, Orochimaru pushed the blade into his hands. The neck is weakest. If you cut diagonally, I won't. Nawaki shouted, throwing the sword to the ground and running off. Orochimaru turned to Minamoto Ren, silently telling him to bring the boy back. But Ren didn't move. Instead, he let out a quiet sigh. Lord Orochimaru, maybe killing these civilians has strategic value, but you don't understand Nawaki, and you certainly don't understand people's hearts. At last, Minamoto Ren added quietly, Lady Tsunade would never have agreed with what you just did. I'm going after Lord Nawaki. Without waiting for a response, he turned and sprinted after the boy. Damn it, he cursed inwardly. This better not be the part with the explosive tag. If that thing goes off now, how the hell am I supposed to explain that? Behind him, Hyuga Heining hesitated. He glanced at the retreating figures of his companions, then at Orochimaru, and finally at the vacant-eyed villagers. After a moment's pause, he gave Orochimaru a slight bow, and followed after Nawaki as well. That left Orochimaru alone in the rain. He bent down, plucked the ninja blade from the mud, and silently slid it back into its sheath. Without a word, he formed a hand seal and disappeared. The old man remained expressionless. After dealing with this group of shinobi, he knew another would arrive eventually. Their lives hadn't belonged to themselves in a long time. Even if no ninja came to kill them, starvation would soon turn them into something less than human, something monstrous. Meanwhile, Nawaki was running blindly through the forest, tears streaming down his face. He didn't understand. The teacher who had just felt warm and familiar, why had he suddenly turned into a killer? They'd been told at the academy that war was cruel, but this was beyond cruel. Those villagers, those helpless, unarmed civilians, were just like the peddlers and farmers back home in Konoha. Why had Orochimaru asked him to kill them? Didn't Lord Third say Konoha stood for justice? Was this what justice looked like? Confused and overwhelmed, Nawaki completely dropped his guard. He forgot his teacher's warnings, always stay alert. Traps are everywhere in enemy territory. And not far ahead, on the third tree from where he was now, a near-invisible tripwire stretched across a branch, gleaming faintly in the rain. Like the blade of the Grim Reaper, it lay in wait, just for him. Ironically, it was just as Minamoto Ren had feared, his curse of foresight come true. This was it. This exact place. This exact moment. In the original story, Orochimaru had killed a man during a mission. Unable to accept it, Nawaki fled, and just a short sprint away, he triggered a trap left behind by Rain Shinobi. One explosive tag, and he was gone. Nawaki leapt onto the second-to-last tree. He was now only 10 steps away from that deadly line. Lord Nawaki. Where are you? Minamoto Ren's voice echoed softly through the woods. Nawaki paused for the briefest moment. His foot touched down. He was about to leap again, onto that fated tree. A leap that would split his destiny in two. A moment that, in another timeline, would set the stage for the tragic split of the legendary Sannin. Lord Nawaki. Lord Orochimaru says he was wrong, he wants to apologize. Ren changed tactics, calling out in a more emotional tone. That one sentence hit its mark. Nawaki stopped. He turned. And in that instant, his fate was rewritten. When Minamoto Ren saw Nawaki, and more importantly, the nearly invisible wire stretched across the tree branch above him, his heart nearly stopped. So close. Just a step more, and it would have been over. His tenuous connection with the legendary Sannin, his subtly rising influence within the Crown Prince squad, all of it would have gone up in smoke. Even if he somehow survived this war by sheer luck, he'd walk away with nothing. Without saying a word, Ren grabbed Nawaki and pulled him far from the trap. Only after they were a safe distance away did he toss a kunai, slicing through the thin wire, which immediately triggered the explosive trap. Nawaki broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't say anything about Orochimaru anymore. Instead, he clung to Ren and burst into tears. Ren understood him. He really did. A teacher had just demanded that he kill innocent civilians, and moments later, he'd nearly been blown to pieces by an explosive tag. And all of this had happened to a 10-year-old child. Who wouldn't cry, if you asked Ren? Kids like Nawaki were the normal ones. It was children like Uchiha Itachi, killing machines at age 6 or 7, executing orders without question, and eventually developing their own moral breakdowns, who were the real reason this world stayed broken. A twisted generation raised by twisted values, passing on the same distorted teachings to their successors. Cycle after cycle of inherited tragedy. Even Ren didn't know how to put it into words. He safely escorted Nawaki back to camp. Neither of them mentioned the trap. Nawaki, after this experience, grew a little quieter, perhaps a little older. As for Orochimaru, he didn't return at all. He had other matters to attend to. The sudden large-scale retreat of Amigakure was highly unusual. Salamander Hanzo was known for his ruthlessness. Any nation that dared to encroach on the land of rain would typically face an overwhelming counterattack. But this time, he had inexplicably ceded a vast stretch of territory to Konoha. This deviation from the norm demanded a high-level strategy meeting. Only a few were present in the command tent: Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru, of course. Also present were the younger generation of the famed Ino, Shika, Cho trio, Yamanaka N, Nara Kanma, and Akimichi Joban. In addition, about a dozen elite jonin attended, mostly to observe. Among them sat a man whose gaze was dark and brooding, his eyes locked on Tsunade at the head of the table, making her visibly uneasy. This man was Mizudori Go, father of Mizunamaru. He was clearly displeased that Tsunade had abruptly pulled his son from the Crown Prince squad and reassigned him to the Yurio Mountain outpost. Tsunade spoke first, cutting through the murmurs in the tent. We've successfully taken Iwaku Gorge according to plan. The Yusen mine is now under our control. On the surface, this should be considered a major victory. However, she continued, our ANBU reports from the front have gone eerily quiet. No updates on Hanzo's whereabouts or the movement of Amigakure's forces. So we pull back, said Nara Kanma, standing before the battlefield map. His round top knot bobbed slightly as he gestured. The Hokage originally intended for us to secure Iwaku Gorge and Yurio Mountain after shattering the enemy lines, but that's clearly not what's happening. Tsunade hesitated. In her mind, the strategic objectives had already been achieved. Holding position should suffice. But Kanma was a recognized tactical genius. Ignoring his advice usually meant trouble. There's no need to retreat, said Orochimaru coolly. We hold our ground and wait for reinforcements. If Hanzo appears, the three of us will deal with him. Though only in his early 20s, Orochimaru's strength already neared Kage level. With Jiraiya and Tsunade beside him, he had every reason to be confident. "I support Kanma," said Yamanaka-en, voicing his stance. Right behind him, Akimichi Joban gave a muffled nod, mouth still full, but clearly in agreement. The Ino, Shika, Cho trio had always functioned as a unit. When their strategist spoke, the others followed without question. After all, their forebears had done the same for a century. Why deviate now? 3 votes from the Sannin, 3 from the Ino, Shika, Cho. A tie. The pressure now fell on the remaining Jonin. "I support Lady Tsunade," said Mizudori Go, stepping forward. "In fact, I believe we should be even more aggressive. Hanzo was bogged down in the Iron Country, he might still be there. If so, now's the time to strike Amigakure directly. We seize their reserves of copper, iron, gold, and silver, break the old dog's back while we have the chance." He may have resented Tsunade, but winning her favor still mattered. Besides, he was chasing military merit, required if he wanted access to advanced jutsu. No battles, no glory. Tsunade wavered even more. Her hesitation was understandable. She was only in her 20s herself. Despite her noble lineage and mature appearance, this was her first time commanding a major front. A little indecision was only natural. In the end, the vote among the Jonin tilted in favor of Tsunade's proposal. It wasn't surprising, after all, her backer was none other than Hiruzen Sarutobi. Nara Kanma let out a long sigh, but said nothing more. Sometimes, a commander could only gain true experience by paying for it in blood. He could only hope the cost this time wouldn't be too high. The Ino, Shika, Cho trio were the first to leave. The rest of the Jonin quickly filed out, until only Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru remained in the tent. "How's Nawaki?" Tsunade forced a smile, trying to lift the mood. "Did he throw up?" Orochimaru, his narrow eyes lined with faint purple shadow, shifted his gaze toward her. "No. I ordered him to kill civilians from the land of rain. He refused." Jiraiya, who had been zoning out, suddenly turned serious. "Orochimaru, we agreed, no unnecessary killing. When are you going to let go of that habit?" Silence followed. The air between them grew heavy. "So where is Nawaki now?" Tsunade asked, voice tense. "Not sure. Probably back by now. After disobeying my orders, he ran off. Minamoto Ren and Hyuga Heining went after him." Tsunade's eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you kidding me? That's how you take care of a kid? Do you even deserve the trust one gave you, Orochimaru?" As both Tsunade and Jiraiya glared at him with growing fury, Orochimaru scratched his face awkwardly. He truly couldn't understand what went on in their heads. It was just a kid, he got upset, let him run off a bit. His teammates followed, there were no enemy forces nearby. What's the big deal? Just then, Nawaki burst into the tent, stormed past Orochimaru with a death glare, and threw himself into Tsunade's arms, wailing, "Yua! Sis! If it weren't for Ren, I wouldn't have made it back." Orochimaru stiffened. His snake-like eyes went wide. A moment later, a furious shout echoed through the entire Konoha camp, roaring Orochimaru's name. Then, a tremendous explosion rocked the central command tent, sending tremors across the earth. Outside, Minamoto Ren heard the commotion, shook his head, and sighed. Orochimaru had many qualities, genius, strength, brilliance, but empathy was not one of them. He could act human when dealing with Jiraiya or Tsunade, but put a child in his hands, and problems were inevitable. If you wanted Orochimaru to remember you, you had 2 choices: be a once-in-a-generation genius who could offer him immeasurable value, or save his ass so thoroughly that even he couldn't ignore it. Well, now that list had grown. Tsunade owed him a favor. And starting today, so did Orochimaru. The Konoha forces followed Tsunade's command, hold the line and remain stationed. Meanwhile, laborers from the rear lines began transporting copper from the Yusen mine. The war had dragged on for quite a while, and even a resource-rich village like Konoha was starting to feel the strain. They desperately needed to replenish their reserves from the newly occupied territories. At present, the Konoha army was divided into 3 groups. Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru remained at the main camp in Iwaku Gorge. A number of jonin were assigned to escort the workers transporting copper. The Ino, Shika, Cho trio volunteered to take command at Urio Mountain, which lacked high-ranking combat personnel and needed elite presence to stabilize the area. And as for the Hidden Rain village, still no movement. During this period, the Crown Prince squad's workload was unusually light. They stayed stationed at the main camp, occasionally learning practical ninja techniques from the senior shinobi around them. Life was, for once, relaxed. No matter what, Tsunade would never assign Nawaki's team to act as scouts. She would not send them into dangerous forests for reconnaissance. Not after what happened. Nawaki's training had entered its next phase, learning a C-rank water release technique, water severing wave, Suetun, Suedanya. Minamoto Ren joined him in practice. This technique, originally developed by the second Hokage Tobirama Senju, had been carefully selected by Orochimaru for Nawaki. Orochimaru knew countless jutsu, but in his seasoned judgment, some were simply better than others. Take the lightning release, false darkness technique, for example. Though it was classified as B rank, its speed and power were devastating. In the original timeline, Kakuzu once used it so fiercely that even Kakashi had to meet it with a two-handed Chidori just to barely cancel it out. Water-severing wave was similarly elite. Unlike other water-release jutsu that simply sprayed large volumes of water, this one compressed a razor-sharp stream from the user's mouth, high in cutting power, long range, low in chakra cost. If you were going to specialize in water release, skipping this jutsu was a waste of potential. Naturally, Ren devoted himself to mastering it. This wasn't just any technique, it was hand-picked by Orochimaru. Back in his previous life, this would be like receiving elite one-on-one tutoring from a top-tier test prep coach. If you still couldn't pass the exam after that, you might as well go work in a factory. Nawaki, seeing Ren so focused, couldn't bring himself to slack off either. The two of them practiced day after day, correcting and refining their technique together. Before long, they had both mastered the jutsu, which, while not exceedingly difficult, still required effort and precision. This success reignited Nawaki's confidence. I'm not the deadweight of the class. I, Lord Nawaki, actually have talent. According to Konoha standards, Nawaki was now eligible for the Chunin exams. As a member of the Senju clan, he already possessed an immense chakra pool. Now that he'd learned a few solid jutsu, he was only held back by his young age, lack of battlefield experience, and the fact that he hadn't yet taken a life. Even so, he was more than qualified to become a Chunin. Ren took stock of himself as well. His chakra reserves didn't quite reach the Chunin level, but he wasn't far off. His arsenal consisted of just the 3 basic techniques and water-severing wave. But he had a hidden trump card, the Kekkei Genkai, Shikatsumiyaku, Dead Bone Pulse. Bloodline limits like this allowed ninja to punch well above their weight class. A Genin Uchiha who awakened the Sharingan could fight on par with a Chunin. A Chunin with 2 Tomo could stand toe-to-toe with a Jonin. And Shikatsumiyaku was a close combat monster of a Kekkei Genkai. It could easily push Ren from a special Chunin level into the territory of a special Jonin. That said, Ren had never liked the way ninja ranks were discussed. Battle between shinobi always boiled down to information disparity. He didn't care whether someone was a Genin, Chunin, or Jonin, everyone was a glass cannon. One misstep, and even the best of them could end up dead in a ditch. That night, Minamoto Ren was washing his feet in the tent. Nawaki leaned sleepily against his shoulder while Hinata Heining sat nearby reading a book. Ever since Ren had saved Nawaki, the boy's trust and reliance on him had grown almost absolute. In Nawaki's heart, probably only his sister Tsunade ranked higher than Ren now. A violent gust of wind tore through the flaps of the tent, blowing in cold rain from outside. The chill carried a hint of the coming winter. Ren glanced casually toward the entrance, and in that fleeting moment, his blood almost froze. A pair of cold, emotionless eyes stared back at him from the darkness beyond the tent. The flickering torchlight inside glinted off a drawn blade, its steely glimmer barely visible through the curtain of rain. Water trickled down the intruder's body, dripping from a forehead protector marked by 2 vertical rain streaks. A hidden rain ninja, they were here. Enemy attack. All of Ren's sleepiness vanished. He immediately infused his voice with chakra and shouted at the top of his lungs. Other tents echoed with similar alarms, but they were soon drowned out by screams, explosions, and the sound of steel piercing flesh. Rain Nin. How did they get here? When? Why didn't the sentries pick up on anything? Ren's mind was spinning. He couldn't understand how the Rain Nin had snuck past the patrols, let alone the ever-watchful eyes of Orochimaru and the other high-level shinobi. The enemy ninja outside their tent hesitated. He could see all 3 inside were already awake, and he sensed multiple chakra signatures converging rapidly on their location. If he couldn't kill in a single strike, he'd be the one to die. He vanished into the downpour. Nawaki, now fully awake, had jumped to his feet in a defensive stance, but the threat had already passed. Are you all alright? This time, the one who entered was Orochimaru himself. His body was soaked, one hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Only his eyes gleamed, cold, razor-sharp. We're fine. A rain ninja tried to ambush us but ran off when he was spotted, Ren quickly reported. Orochimaru nodded and turned toward someone outside the tent. I'm heading out to support Tsunade and Jiraiya. Watch over these 3. If necessary, abandon the camp and evacuate with them immediately. Yes, sir, came the reply, from a voice Ren didn't recognize. Without another word, Orochimaru vanished in a blur of hand signs. Hanzo had arrived, and without him, Tsunade and Jiraiya would be outmatched. A moment later, a nondescript Konoha ninja entered the tent. His face was stiff and unreadable. Uncle Mizudori? Nawaki asked timidly. The man gave a brief nod, his expression softening slightly at the boy's voice. But when his eyes flicked toward Ren, something strange and unspoken passed through them. Ren's heart sank slightly. He remembered that name well, and he didn't forget debts, especially grudges. Young Master Nawaki, I'll get you out of here, Mizudori said calmly, kunai in one hand, the other extended toward Nawaki. But Nawaki frowned. Something didn't feel right. He grabbed Ren's sleeve tightly and said, Minamoto Ren, and Hinata Heining too. Uncle Mizudori, we go together. Ren clearly saw a twitch on Mizudori's face, but after a pause, he forced an awkward smile and nodded. The 4 of them slipped out of the tent into the chaos. The Konoha camp was in complete disarray, battles breaking out everywhere. The Rain Nin clearly held the upper hand, they had the element of surprise, they fought best in rain, and their elite troops were highly trained. Summoning technique, Salamander. A thunderous voice erupted from the heart of the battlefield. A massive gray salamander appeared out of thin air with a boom. Secret technique, Poison Mist Eruption. The ninja standing atop the beast wore a mask that concealed most of his body. Strapped across his back was a chain-linked scythe. There was no mistaking him, Hanzo of the Salamander, leader of Amage Cure. Before they could even react, a wave of purple poison mist surged across the battlefield. The Rain Nin were prepared, they all wore specialized gas masks. The Konoha shinobi were not so lucky. As the choking cries and collapsing bodies filled the air, Ren's entire body began to tremble. This is what a top-tier combatant in the shinobi world looks like. These people aren't just powerful. They're monsters who can annihilate entire armies alone. They are Kage level. Wind release, pressure damage. Even Mizudori couldn't hide his fear. But his instincts kicked in. He unleashed a roaring gust of wind that blew the poison fog away, temporarily buying them time. "We need to go, young Master Nawaki." Hanzo came prepared. This battle is a lost cause. In the chaos, even though Nawaki was panicking, he instinctively clung tightly to Minamoto Ren's arm. That small action made Mizudori go frown in frustration. He had his own agenda. He only wanted to save Nawaki. As for that Hyuga brat and Minamoto Ren, frankly, he'd rather they died on the battlefield. That way, his son, no. He no longer had a son. Mizudori's expression suddenly turned grim. Without a word, he hoisted Nawaki and Hyuga Heining onto his back and charged toward the perimeter. Ren thought for sure the man would leave him behind, but to his surprise, Mizudori signaled for him to follow. It was unexpected, and suspicious. The four of them pushed through the chaos in an awkward formation. Along the way, several Konoha shinobi recognized Nawaki and rushed to assist, throwing themselves into the fight to buy them time to escape. It almost seemed like they'd made it. The Reinin who led the attack were elite, but they lacked sufficient numbers. As long as they broke through the encirclement and reached the Land of Fire's borders, the four of them would be safe. Ah! A sudden scream snapped Ren's head around. One of the Konoha shinobi who had been shielding their retreat, he had just been run through the chest by a single blade. The attacker wore a crying mask, a Reinin. As he withdrew the blade, blood sprayed across his arm. He tilted his head slightly and locked eyes with Ren. This man was Yoru Kuraimi. He had been watching them for some time. The group screamed high-value targets from a mile away, especially the shinobi carrying children on his back. A Jonin, surely. And the kids, clearly the offspring of Konoha's upper ranks. Behind his mask, Yoru's lips curled into something between a smile and a sob. For this war, he had lost everything, his sister, his parents, his entire family. Now, finally, the ones who started this war, would get a taste of that pain. Water style, hidden mist technique. Yoru stood firm, blade ready as thick fog began to envelop the battlefield. A dense, unnatural mist blanketed the area in seconds. Danger. 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 Danger, Ren's pupils contracted. The Konoha ninja who just died was a Chunin, and he hadn't even had time to react. That kind of disparity could only mean one thing, their attacker was a Jonin from the Hidden Rain. The difference between Jonin, Chunin, and Genin wasn't just skill, it was a complete change in class and power. Each Jonin was a strategic asset, irreplaceable and deeply trusted, often granted political influence within their village. They were not soldiers. They were weapons. Mizudori, who had been sprinting ahead, suddenly stopped cold. He couldn't run anymore. The moment his enemy used the hidden mist technique, Mizudori knew he was up against someone of equal rank, another Jonin. Trying to flee with children in hand would only get them all killed. Run. Run. Nawaki landed hard on his feet and immediately shouted out into the fog. They had been separated by a few meters, but now the thick mist made it impossible to see anything. Shut up. Mizudori hissed, his tone turning vicious. The mask of stoicism cracked, revealing the bitterness underneath. He wanted the Reinin to kill Ren. That was the whole point of bringing him along. Now that the fog had fallen, it was the perfect chance to get rid of him. He wanted Minamoto Ren dead, to pay for the life of his son, who had died on Mount Urio. It was Ren who had taken his son's place on that mission. And because of that, Mizudori was left childless in his old age. On the other side of the mist, Ren could hear Nawaki calling for him, but he didn't dare respond, didn't dare move. He could feel it. Someone was watching him. If he so much as twitched, he'd be dead in the next heartbeat. So difficult. So damn difficult, just out of the wolf's den, and now right into the tiger's jaws. Yet in the face of near-certain death, Ren's expression grew calm. His delicate, refined face became as still as water. He had already died once before. What was there left to fear? Within the mist, Yoru Kurayami flexed his fingers, eyeing both sides of the battlefield. On one side, a low-value Konoha Genin. On the other, a Jonin carrying two golden little heirs. Crack, his knuckles popped. A cruel smile spread across his masked face. He's coming. Hyuga Heining's Byakugan flared to life. He could see Yoru through the mist, but not track him. Too fast. Yoru shot forward, hands weaving signs so fast they blurred. Water style, water drill cannon, a compressed stream of water, as precise as a bullet, tore through the thick fog from an unexpected angle, aimed with surgical precision. For a brief second, the blast exposed a flicker of Rain Village robes. A B-rank jutsu, just a warm-up. Yoru's eyes narrowed. He wanted to gauge this Konoha Jonin's skill. After all, not all Jonin were equal, some were white-fanged, others were just Asuma Sarutobi. Mizudori had already prepared his response. With a final hand sign, he slammed his palm into the ground. Earth style, earth wall, a stone barrier surged upward, intercepting the water drill mid-air and absorbing the impact with a harsh crash. Yoru muttered, earth style, and immediately began weaving new hand seals. Dragon Ox Rabbit. Water style, wild water wave, a high-pressure blade of water arced forward like a saw blade, slicing the earth wall clean in half. Get down. Mizudori shoved the two stunned children's heads down just in time to avoid being shredded. Damn this hidden mist jutsu. If only I had the Byakugan. Mizudori's face twisted in frustration. Fighting a fellow Jonin, while also protecting two children, and in a terrain filled with water, was nearly unwinnable. The rain was falling harder now. The probing exchange was over. Each side had a rough measure of the other. So these two kids, must be very important, Yoru sneered. A water-style specialist from the rain. What a pain in the ass, Mizudori muttered, slowly rising to his feet. Hyuga Heining, keep your eyes wide. Report his position the second he moves. As he shouted, Mizudori began forming complex hand signs. But multitasking like this, fighting, protecting, and forming jutsu, was a fatal flaw in high-level combat. Suddenly, a tall, thin figure lunged from the mist. In the blink of an eye, a ninjato flashed through the air, a heavy, crushing blow aimed directly at Mizudori's upper body. Too fast, Uncle Mizudori. Nawaki screamed. In the downpour, a severed arm spiraled into the air, trailing arcs of red as it splashed to the muddy ground below. Hyuga Heining's face went pale. If their lead Jonin had fallen, what chance did they have? Mizudori looked like a corpse, ashen and frozen. The intel was wrong. This Rainin wasn't just a water-style user. He was an elite specialist in kenjutsu, assassination, and advanced water release. There was only one thing Mizudori could be thankful for, his jutsu was ready. Secret art, triple Rashomon, the earth trembled as the massive demonic gates erupted from the ground, each with the snarling face of a yokai. The gates slammed down between the two parties, severing contact and halting the onslaught. Mizudori gritted his teeth against the agony, forced himself to remain conscious, and knocked Nawaki unconscious with a precise blow. Threw a kunai into Heining's thigh, disabling him. And then, he ran. He abandoned them. He broke the shinobi code, discarded the will of fire, and betrayed his comrades. All for the chance to survive. By the time Hyuga Heining registered what had happened, the kunai was already buried deep in his thigh. The pain didn't even register until it was too late. This is what a Jonin-level battle looks like. Before a Genin could even react, the fight was over. The whole exchange had lasted 2 minutes. And Yoru Kurayami had emerged completely unscathed. What a liar. That Konoha mutt only had chakra for one Rashomon gate. The mist began to dissipate. Yoru stopped feeding chakra into the hidden mist technique. As far as he was concerned, the battle was over. How pathetic. Judging by those eyes, you're a Hyuga, aren't you? Betrayed by your own comrades. How's that feel? His masked gaze was taunting, almost gleeful. He slammed his ninjato into the soft earth right before Heining, its blade still slick with Mizudori's blood, droplets falling one by one into the wet ground of the rain country. Hyuga Heining fell into the stance of gentle fist. His form was shaky, understandable, for no one facing death can remain completely calm. Still trying to resist. How troublesome. Yoru Kurayami slowly approached, his lanky figure moving like a ghost in the fog. The Hyuga clan, the main family, does not run away. Heining straightened his back, spine rigid with pride. Though young, he embodied the dignity of his lineage. Secret technique, rain severing. Yoru's hands blurred through dozens of hand seals, this jutsu's complexity rivaled even the triple Rashomon. Strange droplets began to fall from the sky. The moment they touched Heining's skin, panic bloomed in his eyes, his gentle fist chakra was dissolving, being neutralized. This is a technique I developed myself. It's complex and usually too chakra intensive to use often. But against taijutsu users or shinobi who rely on long seal chains, it's perfect, Yoru casually explained, like a teacher giving a lecture before an execution. I'm going to die. Heining's eyes lost focus. The blood loss from his thigh wound was becoming fatal. Goodbye, child of the Hyuga clan. Next time, don't be born in Konoha. Bored, Yoru formed his final seals. His cheeks puffed up slightly. Water style, severing wave. Just then, a shout broke through the mist from behind. Yoru flinched. He had completely forgotten the remaining Genin. Hadn't that kid run away already? A Genin facing an elite Jonin battlefield, he should have vanished long ago. Why was he still here? Secret technique, rain severing cannon. The two high-level water-style jutsu collided midair and neutralized each other. It was clear, though, Minamoto Ren lacked the chakra to keep trading techniques like this. Ren, Heining's eyes widened as he glimpsed his partner through the thinning fog, tall, serious, calm under pressure. I'm counting on you. With those last thoughts, Hyuga Heining slipped into unconsciousness. Maybe he'd wake in a rain ninja prison. Maybe not at all. But somewhere deep down, he still hoped, he'd wake up and see Ren and Nawaki again. Yoru spun midair, grabbing his blade and twirling it with flair. The rain-severing cannon had propelled him back, but now he was ready to end it. Rain-nin like him, shaped by Hanzo's doctrine, had crafted a deadly blend of water release, kenjutsu, and a hint of Kirigakure-style assassination techniques. In the waterlogged terrain of the Land of Rain, such tactics were brutally effective. They stared at each other in silence. There was something mutual in their gaze. Both men possessed that quiet acceptance of risk, that fierce, live or die, resolve. On this rain-soaked battlefield, only one would walk away. Ren hadn't turned back for Heining out of sentiment. He wasn't foolish. Heining, even as a main house Hyuga, wasn't important enough. He came back, for Yoru Kurayami's head. That head would catapult him into Hiruzen Sarutobi's field of view. It would force Konoha's leadership to reassess him, not as a survivor, but as a genius. Only a genius could change the ending of a war already lost. And, perhaps there was a more selfish reason. He simply wanted to know, how far could he go, if he gave everything. Their chakra surged. Both began weaving hand seals at the same time. Water style, severing wave. Slender arcs of slicing water carved through the air. Yoru stepped forward, maintaining his casting posture with his right hand while gripping his blade with his left. He was trying to close the gap, to reach killing range. Even for a Jonin, these repeated techniques had taken their toll. The two massive secret jutsu earlier had already drained much of his chakra. One more strike. One more strike would take the boy's head. Then, with the Byakugan in hand, he'd report to Lord Hanzo and complete the mission. 30 steps. 20. The distance shrank with every heartbeat. Minamoto Ren's jutsu flickered, fading, the chakra maintaining it barely holding. Yoru almost laughed. This genin only knew one jutsu, and he dared challenge a jonin. At that moment, both their jutsu halted, like two gamblers calling each other's bluff. Yoru instantly shifted seals, body flicker technique, he closed the distance in a blink. His blade arced forward with a roar of chakra. This slash, meant to decapitate, was fast, precise, and absolute. But was it truly over? But in Ren's focused eyes, he saw something unexpected in Yoru Kurayami, a smile. You've been tricked. Shikatsumiyaku, Dance of the Seedling Fern, it was Kimimara's ultimate technique from the original canon, devastating area of effect. High speed. High lethality. Ren was betting everything on this, on the information gap between him and his enemy. What? Suddenly, white bone spikes erupted from the ground like bamboo shoots after the rain. At the same time, sharp bones thrust from Ren's own body, deflecting Yoru's blade from impossible angles, and some even pierced straight into the jonin's flesh. You're a Konoha ninja. Where the hell did you get Shikatsumiyaku? Yoru coughed up blood, his eyes wide in disbelief. A massive hardened bone was lodged in his abdomen, while his chest and arm were riddled with bloody holes. For the first time in the fight, rage overtook his calm. He'd been played. Ren didn't bother replying. Instead, he pressed the advantage, rushing forward just as Yoru began forming hand seals again. That sneak attack, powered by the Dance of the Seedling Fern, had severely injured the elite Rain. If he was allowed to escape, to gain distance and perform long-range ninjutsu, then Ren's life was as good as forfeit. Shikatsumiyaku, 10-finger drilling bullets. Ren roared, launching his hardened finger bones like bullets, forcing Yoru to interrupt his seals again and again. He snatched the fallen ninja blade from the ground, eyes bloodshot, and charged. Yoru gritted his teeth and drew a kunai, trying to meet him in close combat, but this, white porcupine, was absurd. The Shikatsumiyaku, renowned as the strongest close-range Kekkei Genkai, made any melee fight a death sentence. First second, Yoru blocked the ninja blade. His left hand, racked with pain, tried forming seals to flee, only to be skewered by a protruding bone. His left arm went numb. Second, Ren unleashed the Dance of the Larch, firing hardened bone shards at point-blank range, punching gaping holes in Yoru's torso. Third second, blood loss clouded Yoru's vision. Time seemed to stutter. As he blinked to refocus, he saw a flash of cold steel in the rain, and the pitiless calm in that white porcupine's eyes. Shing, a clean slice echoed through the rain. A severed head flew into the night sky. Ha, Ren let the ninja blade fall from his hand and gasped for breath, forcing down the nausea that came with chakra exhaustion. But the crash of fatigue, adrenaline fading, wounds aching, sent him to his knees. From the nearby forest came rustling. Several figures emerged, faces Ren recognized from earlier. The villagers that Orochimaru had ordered him to protect. The one leading them was the old man. But this time, his eyes gleamed green with greed. Go. Cut off their heads. We can trade them to Hanzo-sama for food, the old man barked, waving his hand. The few able-bodied men still standing stumbled forward with blades in hand. What are you doing? A shout broke through the tension. Nawaki had returned. Tears welled in his eyes as he saw Ren and Hyuga Heining collapsed on the ground. Mizudori Go had passed out from blood loss. When Nawaki awoke and found no one around, he had raced back, guided by instinct, by loyalty, by the last embers of the Senju spirit. Thank the gods he came back in time. If not, Ren and Heining would have paid dearly for their earlier mercy. kunai rained down like a storm. The old man and his ragtag militia fell without ceremony. Nawaki didn't spare them a glance. He rushed to Ren and Heining, quickly checking their injuries. He bandaged Heining as best he could, picked up the ninja blade lying beside Ren, and slung both boys over his shoulders. He staggered toward the border of the land of fire. As he walked, he passed the field of white bone spikes. Saw the remnants of protruding bones still jutting from Ren's unconscious body, but he didn't care. A friend was a friend. And a friend's secret, that was something to protect, with his life. That was Senju Nawaki's ninja way.
Thank you for listening and joining Minamoto Ren's journey through the ruthless world of Naruto. This is just the beginning of a story filled with strategy, power, and tough choices. To follow the adventure and access exclusive content, be sure to visit patreon.com/mv1717. Until next time, stay sharp and ready for what's ahead.